Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Torched by April Henry, narrated by Amy Mcfadden. Prologue. Hugging the sloshing milk jug to her chest with her slick vinyl gloves, Skye hurried after Meadow and Coyote. The stench of gasoline and diesel made her sick to her stomach. She was shaking, and not just from the chill of the April night. "Now!" Coyote whispered. The three of them dashed across the street toward the car dealership. They all ran a little awkwardly, thanks to the too large thrift store shoes they wore, the toes stuffed with newspaper so no one could trace them by their footprints. When a pebble clattered into the darkness ahead of them, Skye flinched, even though the security guard had just driven off and wouldn't be back for a long time. Earlier in the week, Coyote and Skye had spent 3 nights in a parked car monitoring the security situation. It turned out to be pretty minimal. Every 2 hours, the same guy wove his white and green private security car through the empty streets and then drove away. This part of town was dead quiet at night, a sea of car dealerships and long, windowless industrial buildings. Aside from the security guard's car, there was no real traffic. Now, Coyote nudged her. He grinned and jerked his chin at the banner over their heads. Hot deals on new Hummers. The 3 teens set down their jugs at the edge of the car dealership lot and checked their watches. Skye's said 3:27. She had been awake for nearly 24 hours, but she had never felt less tired in her life. Coyote held up one hand, fingers spread wide. He bunched them together and flicked them out 3 times. They had 15 minutes. They picked up their jugs and scattered to different parts of the lot. The dealership was a place of light and shadows. Along the edges that bordered the road, where a passing driver might stare longingly at a new SUV, it was brightly lit. But between the rows were deep gullies of black, and Skye ran down one of them now. When she was in the middle of the row, she put down her jug and pulled a can of spray paint from the pocket of her hoodie. To her left, Meadow's giggle mingled with the hissing of the paint can. Skye shook her own can, then aimed the nozzle at the side of a black Hummer. She made a white, wavy line along the side, wincing a little when it strayed up onto a window, feeling like a kindergartner trying not to color outside the lines. On the hood, Skye painted, "I heart pollution," then sprayed another wiggly line on the driver's side of the car. She pressed the button to light up her watch. 3:30. 3 minutes gone. She worked faster now, running from car to car. On the front of one, she wrote, "Killer." On another, she wrote, "Fat, lazy Americans." Other Hummers received stars and hearts and more wavy lines. On the car at the end of the row, she wrote, "The medics are healing the earth," although she ran out of space and had to write the word earth kind of small. She checked her watch again. 3:41. Almost time to light the fuse. Skye dropped the nearly empty can of spray paint. She had never littered before, but, like Coyote said, you didn't want to get caught with a can of spray paint the same color as the one used at an action. In the darkness, it took her several long seconds to find her jug of gasoline and diesel. Skye knelt down, the gravel poking her knees through her jeans, and felt for the homemade fuse held in place by a sponge. Crawling under one of the monstrous vehicles, she pushed the milk jug ahead of her until it sat squarely under the engine. After creeping out, she stood and shuffled backward, carefully unrolling the fuse until she was 20 feet away. 3:42. It was time. But before Skye could move, her watch changed to 3:43. She was late. As she pulled the lighter from her pocket, she couldn't believe she was really doing this. Crouched down next to a huge black tire, she flicked the lighter's wheel. It didn't catch. She tried again. Nothing. "Hurry!" someone hissed from behind her. She couldn't tell if it was Coyote or Meadow. Desperate, she yanked off her glove and spun the lighter's wheel hard. The tiny serrations bit into her thumb. Finally, a small flame appeared, flickered, threatening to go out. Hand shaking, Skye cupped the lighter, managing to keep the flame alive long enough to touch it to the end of the fuse. A tiny orange-blue light appeared. It began to race along the string. She stripped off the other glove and dropped it as she scrambled to her feet. She turned and ran. At one point, she tripped over her 2 big shoes and scraped one knee, but in less than a second she was back on her feet. Her ears strained for the first sound. When it came, it was so loud that it was more of a physical sensation than noise. Whoomp! Thick air pushed past her, slapping her left ear. And then another explosion, even louder, this time on her right. Skye ran harder, her breath coming in gulps. She had to get out of the lot before the whole thing was a fireball. Behind her, she heard smaller explosions as gas tanks added their own fuel to the fire. She burst across the street to where Coyote and Meadow gestured frantically. Coyote had just pulled her behind the shelter of a dumpster when the 3rd explosion came. She peered around the corner at the dealership. My God, she thought. We did that. 3 kids did that. Even across the street, it was like standing in front of an open oven. The 3 fires had grown into one, its long orange flames licking the sky. Above it, a pillar of thick black smoke floated up to blot out the stars. The whole thing was strangely beautiful. All Skye's fear was now gone. She soaked in the sensations, the heat tightening her skin, the hungry growl of the fire, the bright flames, the dusty taste of ashes, and the mingled smells of gasoline, plastic, leather, and rubber, all of it burning. "Run, Skye! Run!" Meadow shouted. She jerked Skye's arm, breaking the spell. They bolted away from the dealership. The long blank buildings ahead of them glowed, as if lit by a summer sunset. They cut through parking lots, keeping close to the edges of buildings, and then through another dealership, zigging and zagging. Behind them, Skye heard sirens. They threw themselves into the car. Meadow grabbed the shotgun seat. Coyote shoved the key in the ignition, and they took off. "Woohoo!" he shouted. "We did it!" In his excitement, his voice broke, but he didn't seem to notice or care. It was the kind of thing that had made Skye fall in love with Coyote. Meadow turned in the seat and shot Skye a look from underneath her straight black bangs, one that Coyote couldn't see. "What took you so long anyway, Skye? I was worried you were going to be toast. Literally." As she spoke, Meadow pulled off her dark sweatshirt. In addition to their shoes, the top layer of their clothes had come from thrift stores and would now go into a grocery store's dumpster. "I couldn't get the lighter to light," Skye said. "The glove made my thumb too smooth. Finally, I just took it off." "You took off your glove?" Meadow pulled her t-shirt down into place. "So, where's your lighter?" "I left it there." As soon as Skye said it, she realized this was the wrong answer. Meadow's mouth fell open. Coyote turned to stare, whipping his head back when a police car came barreling toward them. The cop car passed without slowing down. "I had to take it off," Skye said. "I couldn't get the lighter to work." "You better hope it got burned up," Meadow said, looking half scared and half triumphant at Skye's mistake. "What if the cops pull your fingerprints off it?" Skye tried to look worried, but she knew it wouldn't matter. Because it was the cops, really the FBI, who had asked her to be a part of this in the first place. Chapter 1. I stood in the hallway and listened at the closed living room door. It was my turn to cook dinner, but I didn't know how many people to make it for. There were too many voices to count. The doorbell had rung an hour earlier while I was upstairs doing my English Lit homework. Now it sounded like Laurel and Matt were having some kind of meeting. I wondered what they were involved in this week. Saving the whales, expanding gay rights, lobbying for universal health care. Every week there was another cause. It wasn't that I disagreed with their choices. I mean, it was a lot better than if they were picketing abortion clinics. But it never really seemed like any of Laurel and Matt's signs and petitions made much of a difference. Laurel and Matt were my parents, but they didn't like to be called Mom and Dad. They believed the terms Mom and Dad were constructs of a hierarchical society, or something like that. The way they said the words, you could tell they had quote marks around them. There were times when I secretly wished they were like normal parents, that they both wore suits to their office jobs, and on Friday nights we went to the Olive Garden for dinner. But instead of a job in an office, Laurel volunteered for various causes, grew most of our own food in the backyard, and put in stints at the food co-op. Matt was a freelance computer programmer who dressed in flannel shirts and jeans and worked from home. Both of them wore Birkenstocks, and Laurel never wore a bra. We never had much money, but according to them, we didn't need much. Years ago, my parents had lived in a commune, and they still believed in sharing whatever they had. Our dinners usually felt like a casual church potluck or a communal table at a vegetarian restaurant. There might be an anti-war activist at our table one day, or some people Laurel had met at the food co-op the next. I slid open the pocket door to the living room. "Excuse me for interrupting. How many should I make dinner for?" The conversation stopped in midstream. 8 heads swiveled in my direction. This wasn't the normal group of ex-hippies my parents usually hung out with. A couple of them seemed about my age, 16, and the rest didn't look that much older. I didn't recognize any of them from Wilson High, which was good. It would have been way too embarrassing. The room reeked of pot. God, sometimes I couldn't believe my parents. They grew their own weed in the basement and would light up with just about anyone, people they barely knew, old baby boomers like them, and now kids my age. I kept telling them that someday they were going to get caught, but they said they had been smoking pot for 30 years and they weren't about to stop now. Sometimes I felt more like I was the parent and they were the kids. The only person from Wilson that I let come over was my best friend, Mary Jean. Kids at school thought my parents were weird enough as it was. It would be infinitely worse if they thought they could score off them. "This is our daughter, Ellie," Laurel said into the sudden silence. She waved her hand at the people in the room. "These folks are working on, an environmental campaign." "So is everybody staying for dinner?" I asked. "I'm making pasta, so it can get stretched pretty easy." Before anyone answered, they all looked at this guy with black hair combed straight back. Even from 15 feet away, I could see that his eyes were a piercing blue. He was probably the oldest of the group, but still 30 years younger than my parents. He nodded, and then Laurel said, "Of course everyone is staying. Thank you, honey." But I barely heard Laurel because my eyes were caught by a guy with tight golden ringlets that just brushed his shoulders. God, he was gorgeous. He was tall and slim, but with wiry muscles. His tanned skin was set off by his white t-shirt. On the front, it said, "What goes around comes around," with a picture of a green recycling symbol. He looked a year or two older than me. His eyes met mine, and then he smiled. It felt like a bolt of lightning flickered between us. My cheeks flushed, and I quickly looked away. Telling myself to calm down, I counted heads. My parents and I made 3. The gorgeous guy was 4. The older guy was 5. a girl with red dreads was 6, a tiny girl with blonde pigtails was 7. She grinned at me, and I returned it. A creepy-looking guy with eyes that seemed too big for his head was 8, and a girl with black bangs cut straight across made 9. But it was the cute guy with the ringlets I couldn't stop thinking about. Remembering that old saying, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, I hurried into the kitchen. I diced some onions and started sautéing them, then got out our battered old joy of cooking. From the fridge, I pulled milk, butter, eggs, and 3 pints of strawberries. I had planned on making pasta and a salad, but strawberry shortcake wouldn't take that long. An hour later, dinner was served. There wasn't room enough for everyone around the table, so I got a folding chair from the closet and set my plate on my knees. My heart started pounding when I saw the cute guy pick up another chair and carry it in my direction. He opened it up and set it down next to me.
"So you're Laurel and Matt's daughter, huh? My name's Coyote."
His eyes were a light yellow-green, like a cat's. I realized that I was staring and looked back down at my plate. "Coyote?" Thank God my parents didn't name me anything weird, like so many of their friends did with their kids. "My name's Ellie."
"Coyote's kinda my stage name,"
he said. "Are you guys actors?"
"All the world's a stage,"
Coyote said, and laughed. I laughed too, although I didn't really get the joke. I snuck a quick look at him again. One of his front teeth had been broken and mended, leaving a line of bright white in the center. Every time Coyote spoke, that flash of white drew my eye. The girl with red dreadlocks opened up another folding chair and sat down next to Coyote, so close their thighs touched. She wore one of those hand-knit imported sweaters that you can buy at Portland's outdoor Saturday market from some Peruvian-looking guy who also sells panpipes. Was she trying to tell me something? Probably. Well, it had been nice while it lasted.
"This is Liberty,"
Coyote said.
"Liberty, this is Ellie."
Liberty tilted her head a teeny bit, looking bored, like a queen forced to meet the commoners. Coyote introduced me to the rest of them. Meadow was the girl with the black bangs. The friendly girl with the blonde pigtails was Blue. The guy with the 2 big eyes was Hawk. And the older guy that everyone had looked to when Laurel asked about dinner was Cedar. I noticed how everyone catered to him, making a place for him at the center of the table, handing him the first plate of food.
"Even if you look at it from a Machiavellian standpoint, it makes sense,"
Matt said, clearly continuing the conversation they'd been having in the living room.
"We're killing this world, but we depend on it to survive. If we ruin it, where will we live?"
Some tomato sauce sprayed out of his mouth as he talked. I winced, but no one else seemed to notice.
"Exactly,"
Coyote said, getting up to dish up more spaghetti from one of our chipped red Mexican serving dishes.
"Most adults don't even hear what we're saying. All they think about is what they're going to buy next, or they say we're not being practical, that they only have time to worry about paying the mortgage and getting their kids off to college."
Liberty shook her head. "Except at the rate we're going, their kids won't be able to survive in this messed-up world, let alone go to college." She was so intense that her red dreads looked like they could give off sparks. Coyote sat back down.
"This food is really good, Ellie,"
he said. Maybe the old saying was right, and he hadn't even tasted the strawberry shortcake yet. "Thanks." I didn't trust myself to look at his face for very long. What if I forgot to blink? Coyote had long, tanned, strong-looking fingers. "Who wants dessert?" Laurel asked, beginning to dish it up. "If you think Ellie's pasta is good, wait until you taste her strawberry shortcake." She passed the first plate to Blue, who smacked her lips. She was so tiny she reminded me of a sprite or a fairy. "No whipped cream for me," Liberty righteously declared. I'm a vegan. I decided to keep it to myself that the shortcake had an egg yolk in it for extra richness, and passed her the plate Laurel handed me. After dinner was over, everyone carried their dishes into the kitchen. While the rest straggled back to the living room, Coyote said,
"Need any help with washing up?"
Is he just being polite, or is it something more? Sure. Do you want to wash or dry? With shaking hands, I turned on the faucet and started filling the sink with hot water.
Dry.
He started picking up plates that still had leftover food on them. I was proud to see there weren't many. So you guys put on plays about the environment or something? I asked as Cody scraped the plates into the compost bin. Back in middle school, this band came to assembly and sang about how we needed to save water and energy. I didn't mention they were really hokey. One of them wore a suit of armor made from tin cans. He smiled.
That was more of a joke.
Oh. I suddenly felt like I was back in middle school. Then what do you guys do? Coyote's expression turned totally serious.
You can't tell, okay?
I set down the plate I held. Tell about what? Even though we were alone in the kitchen, Coyote leaned closer. He lowered his voice to a whisper and put his lips close to my ear. His breath stirred the hairs on my neck, making me shiver.
We're Mother Earth defenders.
I pulled back. I had read about them in the paper, sometimes seen them on the news. You mean those people who sit in trees so the loggers won't cut them down?
That, and a few other things. But we try to keep a low profile when we're not doing an action. There are a lot of people who don't like what we're doing and would stop us if they could.
Things were starting to fall into place. A lot of my parents' friends gave their kids weird names, but I kind of figured there were too many of you for that to be true.
He shrugged. It's safer if we don't use our real names.
Coyote's cool, but if it was your real name, you'd probably get a lot of grief. At my high school, everyone is into wearing the same clothes, having the same hairstyle, doing the same things. They want you to fit into one of their predetermined little groups, you know? The smart kids, or the jocks, or the drama geeks, or the people whose parents have a lot of money. They don't like people who are different.
So where do you fit in?
Coyote asked. Me? I'm kind of in a group of one, maybe two, I added, thinking of Mara Jean. Because of a car accident, her dad used a wheelchair. Her mom left a long time ago. She knew what it was like to have parents you're sort of embarrassed by at the school open house. He nodded, looking thoughtful. I didn't tell him that growing up with my parents guaranteed you had to march to a different drummer. I had pretty much spent my whole life feeling like I didn't fit in any place. So where do you go to school? I asked. He was still standing right next to me. I didn't know if it was my imagination, but I thought I could feel the heat from his body.
Oh, I've already got my GED and live on my own. I work at the bike shop in Multnomah.
Coyote suddenly seemed a lot older. I couldn't imagine already being done with school. Really? How old are you? I mean, if you don't mind my asking.
I'll be 18 in August. Last year, I talked my parents into letting me be an emancipated minor and take my GED.
Wow, I said. That must be cool. Suddenly, I wondered if Matt and Laurel would let me do that, or if I wanted to. My parents always said you needed to go to college to expand your mind. Coyote gave me a half smile.
It has its moments, but I like working in Multnomah. It's a pretty cool place.
Multnomah Village was a Portland neighborhood about 10 blocks from our house. In the center was a little cluster of stores and restaurants where you could buy gelato or funky shoes, or pick up something at the bakery or the bookstore. Or you could get your bike fixed. I suddenly wished I had a bike. Coyote gave me a smile.
Stop by next time you're in the area, okay? I can take a break and buy you a cup of tea.
I nodded. My veins felt like they were buzzing, like they were filled with tiny bubbles instead of blood. Chapter 2. The Boer War. Had anything ever been so aptly named? While Ms. Tamson, my history teacher, droned on about Sir Theophilus Shepstone annexing the Transvaal Republic in 1887, I stared out the window and thought about Coyote. Normally I paid attention at school, but right now all I could concentrate on was finding a way to work the name Sir Theophilus Shepstone into conversation the next time I saw Coyote. I imagined the bright line of his mended tooth flashing when he laughed. I yawned again, barely managing to get my hand up to my mouth in time. I had been up all night, wondering and worrying. Did Coyote think I was cute, or was he just being friendly? Did offering to buy me a cup of tea count as a date? I had been on a grand total of 2 dates in my life, and neither one of the guys had looked anything like Coyote. But if it wasn't a date, what was it? And what about Liberty? Was she his girlfriend or not? Finally, the bell rang. I pushed my way through the halls and out the front door. Freedom! On the sidewalk, I met Mary Jean. Mary Jean made her own jewelry, and today she wore a necklace she had made out of beads, tiny gears from an old bike, and walnut shells she had carved into twisting shapes. A lot of it was stuff you didn't realize could be pretty or useful until she strung it on a colorful piece of telephone wire. I did basically the same thing, only with clothes. Laurel and Matt bought most of our clothes at Value Village, and a few years ago, I realized that my clothes didn't have to be limited to how they looked when I found them on the rack. If I didn't fit in, I wanted it to be because I was me, not because I was poor. So now I ripped out seams from old clothes and used the pieces of fabric to create something completely different, like a sweater put together from 3 different sweaters. Or I covered stains or holes with appliques and embroidery so that the worst part of a garment became the best. As we started walking away from the school, Mary Jean took a pack of cigarettes out of her purse and lit one. "I wish you wouldn't do that." I moved to the other side of the sidewalk so that the wind blew the smoke away from my face. "I don't know why you don't," Mary Jean said. "Your parents sure wouldn't give you any crap for it." Actually, Matt and Laurel would mind. They think pot's natural, but they hate cigarettes. The other day they had a bunch of new friends over and our house reeked. And half of them were our age. You can imagine how weird that was. Our age? Mary Jean grinned, then pursed her lips and blew a smoke ring. "Were there any cute guys?" "Maybe." I smiled and looked away. "Maybe?" She nudged me. "Spill!" "There was this one guy who calls himself Coyote. He's got these green eyes like a cat's and really tight curls down to his shoulders." "Coyote?" Mary Jean raised one eyebrow, making the little silver hoop she wears there wiggle. "What kind of a name is that? Are his parents old hippies too?" "Kind of." I shrugged, remembering how he had asked me not to tell about the medics. It was kind of weird keeping something from Mary Jean, but I told myself it wasn't a big deal. "Where does he go to school?" "He doesn't. He's 17, but he's an emancipated minor, and he's got his GED. "That's sweet." "He works at the bike shop in Multnomah. But there was this other girl at our house with red dreads hanging around him. She seemed pissed off that he was talking to me." Mary Jean blew another ring of smoke. "I hate dreads on white people." "Me too. Anyway, Coyote told me I should stop by the bike shop and he'd take me out for tea." "No way!" Mary Jean cuffed my shoulder. "Ooh, it sounds like he does like you. So, are you going to do it?" Of course.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?